Collectivist anarchism is a revolutionary anarchist doctrine that advocates the abolition of both the state and private ownership of the means of production. It instead envisions the means of production being owned collectively and controlled and managed by the producers themselves. For the collectivization of the means of production, it was originally envisaged that workers will revolt and forcibly collectivize the means of production. Once collectivization takes place, money would be abolished to be replaced with labor notes, and workers' salaries would be determined in democratic organizations of voluntary membership, based on job difficulty and the amount of time they contributed to production. These salaries would be used to purchase goods in a communal market. This contrasts with anarcho-communism, where wages would be abolished, and where individuals would take freely from a storehouse of goods, to each according to his need. Thus, Bakunin's collectivist anarchism, notwithstanding the title, is seen as a blend of individualism and collectivism. Collectivist anarchism is most commonly associated with Mikhail Bakunin, the anti-authoritarian sections of the First International, and the early Spanish anarchist movement. The First International, Giuseppe Fanelli met Bakunin at Ischia in 1866. In October 1868, Bakunin sponsored Fanelli to travel to Barcelona to share his libertarian visions, and recruit revolutionists to the International Workingmen's Association. Fanelli's trip and the meeting he organized during his travels provided the catalyst for the Spanish exiles, the largest workers and peasants movement in modern Spain and the largest anarchist movement in modern Europe. Fanelli's tour took him first to Barcelona, where he met and stayed with Elie Reclus. Reclus and Fanelli were at odds over Reclus's friendships with Spanish Republicans, and Fanelli soon left Barcelona for Madrid. Fanelli stayed in Madrid until the end of January 1869, conducting meetings to introduce Spanish workers, including Anselmo Lorenzo, to the First National. In February 1869, Fanelli left Madrid, journeying home via Barcelona. While in Barcelona again, he met with painter Josep Lluís Pellicer and his cousin Rafael Farga Pellicer, along with others who were to play an important role establishing the International in Barcelona, as well as the Alliance section. In 1870, Bakunin led a failed uprising in Lyon on the principles later exemplified by the Paris Commune, calling for a general uprising in response to the collapse of the French government during the Franco-Prussian War, seeking to transform an imperialist conflict into social revolution. In his letters to a Frenchman on the present crisis, he argued for a revolutionary alliance between the working class and the peasantry, advocated a system of militias with elected officers as part of a system of self-governing communes and workplaces, and argued the time was ripe for revolutionary action. We must spread our principles, not with words but with deeds, for this is the most popular, the most potent, and the most irresistible form of propaganda. These ideas corresponded strikingly closely with the program of the Paris Commune of 1871, much of which was developed by followers of Pierre-Joseph Proudhon. Marxists were almost entirely absent from the Commune. Bakunin was a strong supporter of the Commune, which was brutally suppressed by the French government. He saw the Commune as above all a rebellion against the state, and commended the Communists for rejecting not only the state but also revolutionary dictatorship. In a series of powerful pamphlets, he defended the Commune and the First International against the Italian nationalist Giuseppe Mazzini, thereby winning over many Italian Republicans to the International and the cause of revolutionary socialism. The collectivist anarchists at first used the term collectivism to distinguish themselves from the mutualism of the followers of Proudhon and the state socialists associated with Karl Marx. Bakunin wrote, "We shall always protest against anything that may in any way resemble communism or state socialism," which Bakunin regarded as fundamentally authoritarian. Bakunin's disagreements with Marx, which led to the attempt by the Marx Party to expel him at the Hague Congress, illustrated the growing divergence between the anti-authoritarian sections of the International, which advocated the direct revolutionary action and organization of the workers and peasants in order to abolish the state and capitalism, and the sections allied with Marx, which advocated the conquest of political power by the working class. Bakunin was Marx's flamboyant chief opponent, and presciently warned against the emergence of a communist authoritarianism that would take power over working people. The anti-authoritarian majority, which included most sections of the International, created their own First International at the St. Imier Congress, adopted a revolutionary anarchist program, and repudiated the Hague resolutions, rescinding Bakunin's alleged expulsion, although Bakunin accepted elements of Marx's class analysis and theories regarding capitalism. Acknowledging Marx's genius, he thought Marx's analysis was one-sided, and that Marx's methods would compromise the social revolution. More importantly, Bakunin criticized authoritarian socialism, and the concept of dictatorship of the proletariat, which he adamantly refused. If you took the most ardent revolutionary, vested him in absolute power, within a year he would be worse than the Tsar himself. The anti-authoritarian sections of the First International proclaimed at the St. Imier Congress that the aspirations of the proletariat can have no purpose other than the establishment of an absolutely free economic organization and federation, founded upon the labor and equality of all and absolutely independent of all political government, in which each worker will have the right to the enjoyment of the gross product of his labors and thereby the means of developing his full intellectual, material and moral powers in a collective setting. Quote, "This revolutionary transformation could only be the outcome of the spontaneous action of the proletariat itself, its trades bodies and the autonomous communes." A similar position was adopted by the Workers' Federation of the Spanish region in 1882, as articulated by an anarchist veteran of the First International, José Lunas Pujols, in his essay, Collectivism. By the early 1880s, most of the European anarchist movement had adopted an anarchist communist position, advocating the abolition of wage labor and distribution according to need. Ironically, the collectivist label then became more commonly associated with Marxist state socialists who advocated the retention of some sort of wage system. During the transition to full communism, the anarchist communist Peter Kropotkin attacked this position in his essay, The Collectivist Wages System, which was reprinted in his book The Conquest of Bread in 1892. Theory. Bakunin's socialism was known as collectivist anarchism, where, socially, it seeks the confirmation of political equality by economic equality. This is not the removal of natural individual differences, but equality in the social rights of every individual from birth, in particular, equal means of subsistence, support, education, and opportunity for every child, boy or girl, until maturity, and equal resources and facilities in adulthood to create his own well-being by his own labor. Collectivist anarchism advocates the abolition of both the state and private ownership of the means of production. It instead envisions the means of production being owned collectively and controlled and managed by the producers themselves. For the collectivization of the means of production, it was originally envisaged that workers will revolt and forcibly collectivize the means of production. Once collectivization takes place, money would be abolished to be replaced with labor notes, and workers' salaries would be determined in democratic organizations based on job difficulty and the amount of time they contributed to production. These salaries would be used to purchase goods in a communal market. Critique of Marxism. The dispute between Mikhail Bakunin and Karl Marx highlighted the differences between anarchism and Marxism. Bakunin argued, against certain ideas of a number of Marxists, that not all revolutions need be violent. He also strongly rejected Marx's concept of the dictatorship of the proletariat, a concept that vanguardist socialism, including Marxist-Leninism, would use to justify one-party rule from above by a party representing the proletariat. Bakunin insisted that revolutions must be led by the people directly, while any enlightened elite must only exert influence by remaining invisible. Not imposed on anyone, deprived of all official rights and significance. He held that the state should be immediately abolished because all forms of government eventually lead to oppression. Libertarian Marxists argue Marx used the phrase to mean the worker control at the point of production, not a party. Would still be a state until society is reorganized according to socialist principles. They maintain that only a dictatorship, their dictatorship, of course, can create the will of the people, while our answer to this is, no dictatorship can have any other aim but that of self-perpetuation, and it can beget only slavery and the people tolerating it. Freedom can be created only by freedom, that is, by a universal rebellion on the part of the people and free organization of the toiling masses from the bottom up. While both social anarchists and Marxists share the same final goal, the creation of a free, egalitarian society without social classes and government, they strongly disagree on how to achieve this goal. Anarchists believe that the classless, stateless society should be established by the direct action of the masses, culminating in social revolution, and refuse any intermediate stage such as the dictatorship of the proletariat, on the basis that such a dictatorship will become a self-perpetuating fundament. For Bakunin, the fundamental contradiction is that for the Marxists, anarchism or freedom is the aim, while the state and dictatorship is the means. And so, in order to free the masses, they have first to be enslaved. However, Bakunin also wrote of meeting Marx in 1844 that, as far as learning was concerned, Marx was, and still is, incomparably more advanced than I. I knew nothing at that time of political economy, I had not yet rid myself of my metaphysical observations. He called me a sentimental idealist, and he was right. I called him a vain man, perfidious and crafty, and I also was right. Bakunin found Marx's economic analysis very useful and began the job of translating Das Kapital into Russian. In turn, Marx wrote of the rebels in the Dresden insurrection of 1848 that, in the Russian refugee Michael Bakunin they found a capable and cool-headed leader. Marx wrote to Engels of meeting Bakunin in 1864 after his escape to Siberia, saying, "On the whole he is one of the few people whom I find not to have retrogressed after 16 years, but to have developed further." Bakunin has sometimes been called the first theorist of the new class, meaning that a class of intellectuals and bureaucrats running the state in the name of the people are the proletariat, but in reality in their own interests alone. Bakunin argued that the state has always been the patrimony of some privileged class, a priestly class, an aristocratic class, a bourgeois class, and finally, when all the other classes have exhausted themselves, the state then becomes the patrimony of the bureaucratic class and then falls, or, if you will, rises, to the position of the machine. Also, Bakunin had a different view as compared to Marx's on the revolutionary potential of the lumpen proletariat and the proletariat. As such, both agreed that the proletariat would play a key role, but for Marx the proletariat was the exclusive decisive, leading revolutionary agent, while Bakunin entertained the possibility that the peasants and even the lumpen proletariat could rise to the occasion. Bakunin considers workers' integration in capital as destructive of more primary revolutionary forces. For Bakunin, the revolutionary archetype is found in a peasant milieu and amongst educated unemployed youth, assorted marginals from all classes, brigands, robbers, the impoverished masses, and those on the margins of society, who have escaped, been excluded from, or not yet subsumed in the discipline of emerging industrial work. In short, all those whom Marx sought to include in the category of the lumpen proletariat. Comparison with communist anarchism. The difference between collectivist anarchism and anarchist communism is that under the former, a wage system is retained based on the amount of labor performed. Anarchist communism, like collectivist anarchism, also advocates for the socialization of production, but the distribution of goods as well, instead of to each according to his labor. In anarcho-communism, the community would supply the subsistence requirements to each member free of charge according to the maxim, to each, according to his needs. The difference between collectivist anarchism and anarchist communism is that collectivist anarchism stresses collective ownership of productive, subsistence and distributory property, while communist anarchism negates the concept of ownership in favor of usage of possession, with productive means being a possession not owned by any individual or particular group. Communist anarchists believed that subsistence, productive and distributive property should be common as social possessions, while personal property should be private possessions. Collectivist anarchists agree with this, however, disagree on the subject of remuneration. Some collectivist anarchists, such as Mikhail Bakunin, believe in the remuneration of labor, while communist anarchists, such as Peter Kropotkin, believe that such remuneration would lead to the recreation of currency and that this would need a state. Thus, it could be said that collectivist anarchists believe in freedom through collective ownership of production and a communal market of sorts to distribute goods and services and compensate workers in the form of remuneration. Thus, collectivist anarchism could be seen as a combination of communism and mutualism. Collectivist anarchists are not necessarily opposed to the use of currency, but some, while opposing the retaining of money, propose the adoption of labor vouchers or personal credit. Most collectivist anarchists see their philosophy as a carryover to communist anarchism, but some see the system and the use of a labor voucher system as permanent rather than a transition. Collectivist anarchist James Guillaume argued that such a society would guarantee the mutual use of the tools of production, which are the property of each of these groups and which will by a reciprocal contract become the collective property of the whole federation. In this way, the federation of groups will be able to regulate the rate of production to meet the fluctuating needs of society. Quote, "They argue for workplace autonomy and self-management. The workers in the various factories have not the slightest intention of handing over their hard-won control of the tools of production to a superior power calling itself the corporation." The anarchist fact compares and contrasts collectivist anarchism with communist anarchism this way. Performance. Application of many collectivist anarchist projects have been successful. Sources during the Spanish Revolution noted that in the Catalan region, Tom Wetzel describes another collectivization. People: Michael Albert, Mikhail Bakunin, Giuseppe Fanelli, Sam Dolgoff, Luce Fabri, Luigi Fabri, Mick Farron, Frank Fernandez, James Guillaume, Ricardo Mella, Robin Harnell, Gustav Landauer, Anselmo Lorenzo. See Acute Essay de PAEPE.